So our first speaker is Rick. So I am going to now hand over to Rick Taylor. Thank you. Okay, where's Rick gone? Was here a moment ago.
Louise, why don't we move on with Jill?
Yeah. I think there must have been some sort of
the technology glitch that happens in 2020.
Of course. So we have James up next. James, are you happy to go first? Sorry about that.
Yes, not a problem at all.
Okay.
Am I on now?
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Welcome everyone. My name's James Parkinson. I own the Duck at Yeoford with my wife Sarah. We purchased the property 2.5 years ago. We come from a hospitality background. Me and my wife both worked in hotels and restaurants up and down the country. We settled in Devon and we were looking for a pub. So we looked and we searched and we found a lovely big country inn in the village of Yeoford called Mare and Foal. We purchased it a 1.5 years ago. We spent 8 months doing up the property. It was a big venture. It took all our savings and all our efforts. And we finally opened 2 years ago today. So 2 years ago today was our opening day. We had a fantastic first year. We've found support from the village. We found support from all the local area. And we always had a vision of owning our own pub. We wanted the pub to be quite relaxed, very family friendly, and a key part of the village. So a year later, almost to the day, lockdown number 1 came, and we thought, right, okay, we've had a fantastic year, and what do we do now? The fridges are full, the cellar was full. We had bookings going throughout 2 days before Mother's Day, and we thought, right, we need to do something that is really going to save our bacon, really. Because we were a new business, we had no financial support from the government. We had to do something. So over a bottle of wine or two, we decided that we would open a shop. The village had lost its shop and its post office, and it was essential that we did something. We had a good takeaway following on a Friday, and we needed to build on this. The shop became an online shop. We got the rights to call it the pub-up shop, which was quite quirky, and came and give us some good support. We were contacted by Pub is the Hub, and we were given a small grant for the opening costs, and we launched it almost straight away. We got some fantastic support. The shop was very busy, but we still had all this stock and all the beer. So we decided that we would still sell the beer and also produce online meals which people can order, pick up and take away. We also increased our takeaway offering to a Saturday, and we found it really good. We were busy. We were doing up to 100 portions every night on our own. All our staff were furloughed, and it was busy and it was good. But we was finding it hard to survive. We had all the opening costs still, so we needed new things to be doing. We looked at all our competitors. We looked at what other people was doing, and we decided that we had to take a bold step and look at dining outside. We invested in tables, chairs. We had an outside area which was covered called the duck shed. We doubled that in size. We were offering free delivery to people that were self-isolating in the village and the surrounding villages. And we thought that's what we need to do. We invested in 2 marquees for the garden. So when we were eventually allowed to open, we were outside first. We invested in all the sanitizers. We invested in all the Dyson hand dryers, so we were all compliant. We perspex the bar, so all that was done. I mean, all this was a great cost, but it did bring the people in. And then we looked at Sunday lunch, because that was always a big part of our business. So we started doing takeaway Sunday lunch. We asked all the regulars and all the customers in the village what would they like, what would they like to see from the pub. And the common consensus was that people wanted an experience and something to look forward to. So in this past 2 weeks alone, we've done 40th birthday parties. We've done, all this food is delivered. It's a bespoke service, and we can cater to your needs, anything up to just for a family. And this week alone, we've done 3 of those events, which is great. The shop was a great success at start, and people were coming and giving us great orders. Unfortunately, in time, it became more a convenience shop, and that is still the plan. Going forward, we never actually got a chance to open the shop properly, and so that would be our next plan, would be to open the shop fully and get more on board with the marketing side of that. The takeaways were doing really well. We tried some theme evenings. We did a French evening, which was a success. We did a pie evening, which was a success. And I think we were bold that we never stood still. We always tried to do something different and think outside the box. And to this day, we're still doing all these. We're still doing pies, and we're still doing theme evenings. But suddenly, obviously, with the looming of the second lockdown, things were hard. So we decided that we needed to go back to basics. On the third lockdown, which was just before Christmas, once again the fridges were full. It was 2 days before New Year's, 3 days before New Year's Eve. We had to assess all our bookings were in. On a more positive note, the people that had booked for New Year's Eve, they had it as a takeaway. So we went back to doing the takeaways full on. We were offering a Christmas Day package where people could pick up and have a Christmas meal. That was very successful. So there was all positives coming out of this. We were making 100 Christmas puddings and selling them in the shop. We always promoted the local real ales and the local real ciders. That's a big part of what we do. And in the shop as well, we were also selling all our local produce, from honey to lamb, to some fantastic vegetables that were being grown locally. And that was quite a big part of it as well. We also then discovered that we couldn't sell on lockdown number 3, that we couldn't sell alcohol, but we could deliver it, which was a bit of a strange one for us. So we set up an operation called Deliver Booze. So we would get all our locals in the local area to drop their containers off, and they would have a free delivery service. So if it was 4 pints, 6 pints, 8 pints, we set up the Deliver Booze operation, which was a great success, and still to this day, we're probably selling up to 80, 90 pints at a weekend. So that was a big success for us. We also offer bespoke menus all the time now, and also a big focus for us is afternoon teas. People want that occasion, they want to feel special. They don't just want something off the peg, and that's why the bespoke menus really, really work. And it was a great success over Valentine's and over Mother's Day. Mother's Day being one of our busiest days of the year. The shop still continues to be a big focus, and we are in the process of opening the shop fully. We've got all security cameras in there, all the shelving's up now, and we're going to have a big push on this to make it the key part of the of the village. We intend to deliver papers, order papers for a weekend, start our takeaway coffees, morning goods, croissants, bacon rolls, that kind of thing, especially at weekends. We were very fortunate last year that we won an award for being the runner-up of the best family pub in the Daily Telegraph, and we are keen to build on that now. We're going to invest heavily in the playground. We've got a small playground which is going to double in size. We're in the process of landscaping all the gardens. We've painted the pub throughout on the outside, and it's a very positive time, looking for a fantastic summer. So some positives have come out of all this, and hopefully it'll be a great summer and we'll continue to thrive. And I think that is about it.
Thank you, James. That was great to hear, and it's really lovely to hear ending on a positive, despite all those ups and downs, about how amazingly you've adapted along the way, especially for a new business. Thank you so much. Rick is now here, so we'll sort of adjust the running order and move on to Rick Turner. Thank you. Okay, Rick was here until about 3 seconds ago when he's disappeared. I'm so sorry, he literally disappeared as I spoke. Okay, let's go on to Jill, and hopefully Rick will re-arrive.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Jill Taylor, and myself and my husband run and own Southview Lodges. We have 5 luxury lodges, a couple of miles from Exeter, in a village called Shillingford St George. If any of you have ever been near the Orange Elephant ice cream parlour, we're literally just down the road from where they're based. We've been running the business now for 10 years. When I left school, I went into the hotel industry. I trained as a chef and worked in hotels for quite a while, then met my husband, and a few years later we set up a driving school, and we still run a driving school today. So not only did we have one business closed in lockdown, we actually had 2 closed in lockdown, so it was a bit of a double whammy, I suppose. So we have 5 lodges, we have 3 fishing lakes. We used to be a very busy day ticket fishery. We're now just a private fishing lakes for our lodge guests only, and we're based at a farm as well, so also a working beef farm. So let's talk about the lockdown. So the week before we went into lockdown 1, I think it's probably a couple of weeks before we went to lockdown 1, we started having a lot of cancellations. Our lodges were fully booked. It was a few weeks before Easter, so it's a very, very busy time for us. I think we had these cancellations come through, and as soon as we made them available on our website, we had people rebooking them, because cruises were being cancelled, flights were being cancelled. So even though we had guests cancelling, there was a huge demand still for guests to travel and be somewhere that's isolated in the country, so that they could get away from it all. And I think, you know, there was lots of talk about, you know, businesses being closed down. And we always thought, well, there's no way that Boris is going to close down isolated lodges in the country. You know, it's not going to happen to us. And then bang, it did. And I still remember that feeling now, that Sunday night when he said, you know, everything's closing down, like it was yesterday, because suddenly your whole world, as I guess a lot of you were as well, your whole world is literally torn apart, and you literally have no idea what actually is going to happen within the next 24, 48 hours, the next weeks, months. Is our business going to survive? It's really, really worrying times. And because it was just before Easter, our guests for the lodges pay in full 8 weeks before arrival. So from the day we went to lockdown, the next 8 weeks of bookings, everyone had paid in full. So that night we went to lockdown, I was devising an email to send to all the guests that were booked, you know, to try and get them to rebook, and, you know, rebook for maybe 4 or 5 weeks time if we had availability, because there's no way we were going to be locked down for longer than 4 or 5 weeks, was there? Little did we know. Or to give some like a voucher system so that they could rebook when they felt they wanted to travel. What we didn't want to have to do is to now suddenly have to refund everyone. And the reason for that was, in February, we closed the lodges ridiculously for 3.5 weeks. We did some major works on 3 of the lodges outside, and we decided that we would close because we would open back up going into a really busy season. Financially, we looked at how we were going to pay for these, the refurb outside of the lodges. It was quite expensive, but actually, because we'd had the money in for these payments in full, we decided, and with some savings that we had, we'd pay for it outright. We wouldn't get a loan or add it onto the mortgage or anything. We'd pay for it outright because we're going into a busy season, so the money will start coming in. So then when you go to lockdown and there's talk about people having refunds, and well, actually you've taken the money. I mean, we didn't have guests saying this to us, but we know that a lot of properties did. You know, you've taken the money, so actually you should be able to refund it. If I'm being totally honest, we'd invested it all. We had some left, but most of it we'd invested it. So the thought of now having to refund everyone, you know, filled us with complete dread. We're really lucky for lockdown 1. If I'm being totally honest with you, we were booked from that March right through to that July. We only had to do 1 refund to the value of £1,000 or just under £1,000. We were really lucky. Everyone rebooked, or they just said, you know what, we'll think about when we're going to come again. And some of them rebooked for this year. We didn't put a time limit on it. We tried to be as fair as we can, but we just explained to people that as a small family business, myself, my husband and our 2 kids, and in order for us to survive, we really didn't want to have to refund, and we were really grateful that we didn't really have to. A couple of days after we went into lockdown and we'd moved most of our guests, you know, your nighttime sleeping, I'll be honest with you, it was difficult, because actually we had 7 days before we had our mortgage payment to come out, and other business expenses to come out, and that was fine for that month. But what about the next month, when actually I can see there's not going to be any income at all coming in? We had an unexpected call from our bank manager. It was a new bank manager. We didn't even know our old bank manager had left, and they were really understanding. He said, you have a good business. Tourism, if you've got a good business, you will survive through this, because once you can open up, you're going to be busy, because more people than ever are going to want to travel in this country for holidays rather than going abroad. And certainly the Southwest and Devon is really appealing to them. So the bank said to us, you know, we will support you in any way that we can. So that was a great feeling. And then obviously a few days after that, the government announced business rate grants that were available. We are business rate payers, so we would be eligible for those. And I suppose it was from that moment onwards for us that we knew that we would survive this lockdown. And actually, while we were being closed and as the days went on, we realized the lockdown was going to go on not just for 4 or 5 weeks as we initially thought, but, you know, for maybe a few months. So we then had some finances to be able to invest in our business, because if you're going to invest, then while you're closed is the best time to be able to do it, because you're never going to get this opportunity again, because after lockdown 1, we're not going to have any more lockdowns, are we? Again, very little did we know at that time. So my husband worked like an absolute trooper, and in fact it got to the point he was desperate for guests to come back so we could actually have a rest. So there was lots of works that went on around the fishing lakes. We readdressed banks that were eroding, replanting, lots of work to the outside of lodges. We were painting on the inside. Over Easter, because we live on site, over Easter I said to the kids, right, we're going to stay in one of the lodges, you choose. This is the only time you're ever going to be able to go on holiday at Easter, because we can never go away, it's too busy for us. So the kids chose the lodge. Andrew and myself had been busy working that day, went back to the lodge, had a barbecue going, and sat down with a glass of wine and realised that in front of our lodges we have wooden balustrades, and we sat down. And, you know, and bearing in mind, 2 of our lodges have been up for nearly 10 years and the other 3 have been up for 3 or 4 years. We felt like we were in prison looking through this wooden balustrade. And so 4 weeks later, in front of those lodges, we had glass installed. And it was one of the best things that we've done. My cleaners hate it. I hate it for cleaning. It's a nightmare, but it looks amazing. And in fact, during lockdown 3, our last 2 lodges, we're having glass installed next week. And it really does look good. So yeah, so lots of things that were going on. In fact, my husband even had the time to teach the children to fish. Fishing wasn't allowed during lockdown 1, but obviously because we live on site, then that was fine. So he caught some big fish. We posted some pictures to our guests. They were totally jealous, but it was all great for marketing. He had some quality time with the children, which, to be fair, doesn't always happen. So because generally we're so busy. So there were positives that came out of lockdown 1. I actually, when guests arrive, I make cream teas, I make cupcakes, I make birthday cakes, etc. So I started up a little cupcake business and cream tea business during lockdown 1. I did it for 6 weeks and it completely took over my kitchen. So 6 weeks was enough and I stopped it. But I was posting cream teas to guests, posting cupcakes. I actually found a method where the cakes and cream teas would get there and they were surviving. The cream was staying cold, and so that was good. It was also VE day during when I was doing it, so I was delivering loads to Exeter as well. I think one day I delivered 34 cream teas, so was up very early that morning making scones. But you know, for us it was positive. Then Boris said when we could open towards the middle to end of June, that we could open in July, and that feeling was, you know, great, and it was excitement really of opening. And that day when guests arrived, we said to guests they could turn up early because the lodges had all been cleaned. So guests started arriving from, I think we had some come down from Stourbridge. They left Stourbridge at 5 in the morning, didn't stop, got to us just after 8 in the morning. I didn't quite expect people to turn up that early, but it was all fine. And it was just lovely to see people. And we certainly felt, once we opened, that period between July and October when we were busy, guests were more appreciative, I think, than ever they have been before, of being able to be on holiday, and whether they were traveling with family or whether they were coming to visit family, they were just more appreciative of everything. And we noticed it with everyone. And we had guests that were holidaying with us that would never holiday in the UK, but their holidays to Spain or Portugal, wherever, were cancelled, or they decided they didn't want to travel. And it was lovely to see them actually enjoying what Devon has to offer. So, you know, once we were open, that was great. Obviously, the cases started to rise towards September, October, and sort of the lockdown started to happen in certain areas, or restrictions of people traveling. But I think when we went to lockdown 2, for us, that was like, we never saw that coming. I don't know if you saw it coming. We did not see it coming. And when Boris said we were having to close for the month of November, for self-catering, you know, our lodges have hot tubs, they have log burners, so winter we're always busy. We would not expect to be fully booked for November. We'd expect to be booked for the weekends and have availability during the weeks. But for November, we had 100% occupancy. And 4 days before we went to that lockdown, we had taken or finished taking all the final payments for the whole of November. So we were kind of not working it as an 8-week final payment. It was maybe 1 or 2 weeks before arrival, then people were paying in full just to check that they could travel or we could stay open. But everyone for November had paid in full, because I don't think anyone thought they weren't going to be able to travel to us. And that was a massive kick in the teeth, because for those guests, it was about 50% of people wanted refunds. And I think we did something like about £12,500 of refunds. There were government grants again to support us. I think it was around £2,000, but when you're refunding £12,500 and your mortgage and all your other costs are back up to full, that hurt. That really, really hurt. But anyway, we cracked on. We did have some bookings in November for key workers, people having to shield. We had a husband and son that stayed because the wife was having chemotherapy, and because they were key workers, they didn't want to mix. So, we took, I think it was 4 or 5 bookings in November. It wasn't very much, but it kind of helped. So when we opened back up for December, Boris put Bristol into, I think it was number 3 or 4, I can't even remember the name of what they call them now, so they couldn't travel. And for us, Bristol is our biggest market. So it was 1 minute we thought, brilliant, we can open and all our guests can travel. But then when we knew that no one from Bristol could travel, we had 60% of our bookings cancelled. So we went from like elation to depression within about half an hour. The London market could still travel at that point when we were allowed to open, because they were, I think, in tier 2. But obviously then, as the tiers for a lot of places got higher, we were having more cancellations, but a lot we did get rebooked again. We had people from Christmas that ended up cancelling, people from New Year that cancelled, but we had quite a few local people that then rebooked. So December wasn't as good as what it should have been, but it wasn't as bad as what it could have been. It was obvious at the after Christmas that we were going to be going to a lockdown, so I guess we prepared ourselves for it. People were booking like crazy for January and February. We were just not taking any money. There was no point taking any deposits. So that kind of made it easier, I suppose, when we went to lockdown 3, we didn't have to do so many refunds. Again, grants have been made available. Our bank aren't quite as supportive as what they were for lockdown 1. Basically, their reply now is, well, you had a bounce back loan. For lockdown 1, we didn't have to use that bounce back loan. For lockdown 3, there's a bit of a bounce back loan left, not a lot. But we are now just very much looking forward to being able to open in April, and we're really busy right through to the end of October, November. We're booked up for Christmas and New Year, and the bookings for next year are more at this time of year for next year than ever they've been before. And we're hoping, obviously, like everyone, that there isn't going to be another lockdown, but we know with a good summer and a good spring that, we can recover those monies back again. We can't get the money back for what we've lost. You kind of have to write that off, but we have to look to the future, keep investing, keep having guests that want to obviously travel to stay with us, and working hard. So it's not been easy. My diary is constantly changing, but we are now very positive for our future. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Jill. That sounds like such a roller coaster that I think probably quite a lot of people here also empathise with. It's great that you've maintained a positivity through that as well. Okay, I'm crossing my fingers now. I can see Rick. Hopefully this will now work to hand over to Rick.
I love technology. It cuts me out twice and then I come back and I've got a lot of sheep in the background. So I'm changing the thing. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. Right. Thank you ever so much for inviting me to this. I'm probably in a fairly unique position because I've actually been through this hugely destructive and damaging storm before. I operate the Big Sheep in North Devon, and in 2001, the business was devastated with foot and mouth, resulting in huge losses. And I was, in fact, within a few weeks of losing the business, the farm, my house, in fact, everything I owned apart from my clothes. Everything else was mortgaged to the bank, who were just about to foreclose on me. I've spent the past 20 years studying and presenting on the science of happiness. And hopefully today, I'll be able to help you to ride out some of your sort of anxieties and stresses during the COVID storm with some of the things that I do. We're in the eye of the storm, incredibly worried, stressed and anxious about our businesses and the future. I'll go through some of the coping mechanisms that I use that help me personally to remain positive and upbeat, or at least for most days and nights when I have trouble sleeping. The other interesting bit which provides hope for the future is a concept which I've come across called post-traumatic growth. I'll explain what I did after foot and mouth and what you can do to ensure that this huge shock to you and your business could provide you with the opportunity for an even brighter future than before. Many of us are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or at least we are close to we're seriously suffering. It says post-traumatic stress disorder sufferers often relive traumatic events through nightmares and flashbacks, and many experience feelings of isolation, irritability, and guilt. They also have problems sleeping, such as insomnia, and find concentrating difficult, which I'm sure many of you are probably realizing. Most of us are suffering from stress at the moment, and as we move towards the end game, we can continue to follow the downward spiral of depression, anxiety, and mental illness, blaming the COVID crisis, the government, lack of help and support by the bank, or look at what we can do to start rebuilding for a brighter future. After foot and mouth, we had the most successful years in the first 20 years at the Big Sheep, experiencing significant post-traumatic growth. This is sometimes seen after a medical emergency, when you nearly die of cancer, survive a serious car crash, or lose a partner or someone in the family. After foot and mouth, we started an extreme adventure centre, which later became a significant separate business with a turnover in excess of £1 million. We introduced our award-winning brewery, whose beers have won National Camera Awards, and which have now diversified into gin distillery, which we even had making hand sanitizer last year for the site here. We started new horse spring shows, which led to us doing pony rides and other shows, like our milking show, the Woolies Magic Show, and our beer experience show. We built and operated a new plant and garden centre, planting thousands of trees around the site. We extended focus of attraction away from sheep, including other rides, and now have the Southwest's biggest roller coaster. We created new marketing using our Willie the Sheep character, who has recently appeared on Britain's Got Talent, or last year he did. And we managed to become North Devon's most popular family attraction. So after a huge disruption to the business, I'll try and explain how we did it. In tourism and hospitality, we're at the cutting edge of the COVID storm, which is not within our control. Many of us are suffering enormously. I know that I am financially, mental health-wise and personally, and this is quite a shock for somebody who is incredibly positive and upbeat like myself. It's hugely tough, as whatever we try has limited benefits, and many of us are now just sitting in our boats, holding onto the mast as we allow the waves to crash over the boat. We are frightened, angry, helpless as the boat fills with water, and we see our businesses and financial situation getting worse by the day. The psychologists call this learned helplessness. This is the default position that we as humans get into after a prolonged period of adversity, when nothing we seem to do seems to make a difference. It's human nature for us to be worried and concerned at the moment. And in fact, it's key for us to do this now. A position of unrealistic optimism will surely sink the business. We need to look at what Jim Collins, the American author, calls the Stockdale paradox. And this is what we used after foot and mouth. This is about leadership in a crisis situation, and is a key factor that will separate those of us who go on to thrive and grow after the pandemic from those of us who will spend the next decade suffering and living a life of unhappiness, lost opportunities, and bitterness. Admiral Jim Stockdale was captured by the Japanese and interred in a horrendous prisoner of war camp, one of the worst in Asia. And in the middle of the jungle, with little chance of escaping, he, as a senior officer in the camp, was responsible for trying to make sure that as many POWs were kept alive. The Stockdale paradox, and this is really the key, which I think is paramount for all of us. The Stockdale paradox, you must maintain unwavering faith that you will and can prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties, and at the same time have the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. We have to face the brutal realities of the situation we're in. Don't ignore your financial issues, staffing problems, and jobs that need to be done to restart your business. Worry is a learned negative emotion, which over the past year, many of us, even the non-worriers, will be spending huge amounts of our waking day and most of the night wallowing in, ending in a spiral of anxiety, stress, and concern. Our neural pathways, which we will be so well practiced that even the slightest trigger can send us into the spiral, raising our blood pressure, heart rate, and making sleep nearly impossible. We often spend time catastrophizing on the worst things that can happen. This isn't achieving a lot apart from to make us miserable and shorten our lives. So what can we do? The stats say that 92% of things that we worry about will never actually happen. And when we spend much of our nights in a sleepless state, worrying about the things that often in the morning we have actually forgotten and achieve nothing apart from being tired, irritable, and grumpy during the day. Don't catastrophize, but be realistic. Remember the Stockdale paradox. What is the worst thing that's going to happen if these fears are actually realized? You have to then write this down and accept that this may happen in the worst case scenario. So looking at our boat in the storm, our worst fears as we cling to the mast in the middle of the COVID storm with the waves crashing over the boat are that the boat is going to be smashed to bits by the waves, swamped with water, and you as the captain and all the people on board are going to drown. Accept this worst situation, and once you have done this, you can plan to make a better result. What can we do in the boat? Start bailing water when you're able. Try and pull in some of the sail. Instead of just hanging onto the mast and allowing the waves to batter the boat, would it be better if you were hanging onto the wheel and trying to steer into the waves? The moment you start to do things will make the situation better. It's the moment you find a reason for getting up in the morning. Achieving small wins will motivate you and make you feel better, giving you energy, and stop acting like a rabbit caught in the headlights, frozen in motion and achieving nothing. Okay, I now know that you've tried many things and they have not worked to recover your financial situation, but the ones who are going to go on to survive and thrive are the ones who keep going. It's incredibly daunting for us at the moment, so here's the big question. How do you eat an elephant? It sounds a pretty daunting thing to do, and the answer is one mouthful at a time. So it can be done, but it's not going to be easy. This is a huge call to recover from the COVID storm. It will take perseverance, focus, and a huge commitment from you. But this storm, like all others, however destructive and ferocious, is temporary and will be over. Not sure exactly when, but there will be calmer waters ahead. You can't change the wind, but you can adjust your sails. So how do we get post-traumatic growth after foot and mouth? We followed the Stockdale paradox. I accepted the possibility of losing everything. I even worked out a new career, running a PR and marketing company. I kept positive, knowing that I can do things to improve my position, knowing that the crisis was temporary and outside my control. I took positive action rather than just positive thinking. I like the saying, there's three frogs on a log. One decides to jump off. How many frogs on the log? There's obviously still 3 frogs on the log, because although one decided to jump off, none of them actually jumped off the log. So rather than positive thinking, we need to get into some positive action. We focused on what we could do rather than what we couldn't do when they started to do those things. At the time, I worked incredibly hard. I worked out what I was trying to do and then took some small steps to try and achieve this, lots and lots of small steps. I looked for help and support. After foot and mouth, we only had £10,000 help from the government, which we used as a marketing game changer. It helped us to develop a new leaflet, and we developed a Wooly the Sheep character that then enabled us to develop other non-sheep related ideas that could tie into the brand. Support from the bank manager was key. I worked with partners. I looked at whatever opportunities were available, what assets I could use. I was open to opportunities and pursued them all relentlessly. Some worked hugely well, like getting planning permission for 3 houses in the gardens of 2 houses I owned, and others like the plant centre less so. I used mindfulness to help me sleep and park the worries until I could do something about them, i.e. the next day. This is a key one. Most things can't be sorted in the middle of the night. And for those of you that have never done mindfulness, there's a guy called John Kabat-Zinn, and if you look at it on YouTube, that's a really powerful one to try and help you relax and to sleep at night. Okay, just finally, I've got my 10 top tips for you today to make your life happier. So I've spent 20 years looking at and studying happiness, and these are some that anybody can do. I do them all the time. So the first one is to get physical. Minimum you should be doing on your phone heart app is 10,000 steps a day. The amount of stress that I'm up to about 22,000 steps a day, which is about 3.5 to 4 hours walking. I've also got a dog that gets quite tired at the moment. So getting a dog, getting physical, do some exercise is key, and especially when you're stressed. Another one I do is to have an escapist novel. You know, you need to get away from the worries and the stresses. And if you can do something that will just take you away from reality, even for a short period of time, that does, I find, help. I use mindfulness to help me relax and to sleep at night. So I have various different ways in which I can force myself to sleep, reduce my heart rate, and that works really well. Next one is one I really like, is to give yourself a treat every day. But what the key thing with a treat is, you need to make sure that you realize it is the treat. So don't have a packet of biscuits, just have a single biscuit. Don't have a whole box of Thorntons, just have a single Thornton and absolutely love it. Look forward to your treat, savor every second of it. Remember, when you're eating, 100% of the flavors in the first mouthful, and by the time you get to the fourth mouthful, you're pretty well having calories, because you really don't have any flavor left. So give yourself a treat once a day. Don't watch too much news. Don't read the Daily Mail. And if you watch the news and read the Daily Mail, try and keep emotionally detached from all the shit going on and the stories, because that can make you very, very sad. And also try and cut your TV viewing. So try and just have one really good program that you look forward to every night, and then go out for a walk. Right, next one is about phoning a friend. So phone a friend that you haven't spoken to for a while. Believe me, that will make you feel great. The next one is try and have a good laugh. So look at all your friends, you know, whether it's a TV program that makes you laugh or whether it's some friends that make you laugh. We have a number of WhatsApp groups that all the jokes fly around in, and it just makes you feel better. So try to be happier, try and have a good laugh every day. The next one is about being grateful. So the psychologist, this is actually one of the ways in which people can recover from clinical depression and anxiety, but it also works to make us happier as well. And it's basically keeping a gratitude diary. So write down 3 things every night that went well during the day, or that you're grateful for. And when you're having a really bad day, just go back to your gratitude diary and see all the great things that are going on in your life. The next one is doing a random act of kindness. So if you can do something for someone else, you will feel absolutely fantastic. It's not always difficult, especially at the moment, because you can't really do a random act of kindness because you can't meet anyone else. But it might be just doing something online or on the phone. And then the last one, in the spring, try and enjoy the beautiful ordinary. So look at nature, look at beautiful things, and really, really appreciate them. If you fill your mind with good thoughts and things, there's no room for the bad thoughts and the bad things. I know it wasn't much about the big sheet, but I hope you enjoy that. And certainly it might help. We're in the middle of a massive COVID storm. And I know that I'm suffering big time. So I know that most other people will also be suffering too.
Thank you so much, Rick. That was really inspiring, especially your lessons learned from what you've done before and all of those tips. I especially like the beautiful every day and paying attention to those kinds of things. Also, just to mention that Rick mentioned about phoning a friend. If you just have that sort of feeling that you don't want to burden anybody or anything like that, or whatever reason you want to talk to somebody you don't know, but just offload, that's what the Listening Ear Project has been set up for. So if you Google Listening Ear Devon, and I'll send all attendees the link as well, we have a one-to-one service that you can book onto. It's a pilot, so it's not running for much longer, but I would really recommend it, because just talking to somebody does really help. Thank you so much, Rick. We're now going to hand over to Sally Everton from Visit Devon. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Louise. Wow, Rick, I have to follow that. That was fantastic. And of course, I've known you a long, long time. And I think what you do is awe-inspiring, and people should definitely take a leaf out of your book. And I'm certainly going to take some of those tips. Good morning, everyone. As you know, I'm Sally Everton from Visit Devon. And I thought I'd start actually by giving you a little bit of background on Visit Devon and how we exist and how we have survived through this pandemic, and how we're also planning forward. So not just 2021, but 2022 and well beyond that. And 2020, the year of the pandemic, who'd have thought that 2021 would also be the year of the pandemic? So just to give you a bit of background on me, I have been in the tourism industry for a long, long time. Up until 2016, I was a director of sales. My background is hospitality, so I was working for hotel groups, and I was director of sales at Bubby Castle for 8 years. And I suddenly had a moment that I wanted to set up on my own, which I did. Became a consultant working for many tourism businesses around Devon, which is where I'm born, bred, and where I'm from, obviously. In 2016, Visit Devon, which had been very much a dormant company because it had no funding, a group of people got together, and as a board of directors, of which I am one, set up Visit Devon to the format that it is now, which is a community interest company. We are non-funded. We get funded only by commercial partnerships, which of course is you good people. It is our members that pay for Visit Devon to exist. And everything that we make from that goes back into marketing Devon as a destination. So of course, when the pandemic hit, our finances literally dried up overnight. Businesses couldn't afford to pay membership. So we were in a very sticky situation. And I will say last year, I was laid off 4 times. And the only reason I'm still here and that Visit Devon still exists is because I applied to government for funding, like so many of you on this call. And I applied for what they call DMO emergency funding, which is called Destination Marketing Organisation funding, which is a big mouthful. But that is what has kept Visit Devon going, and still does until the 31st of this month, where we've now started to recoup some of our membership dues so we can exist. The importance of Visit Devon became absolutely apparent during this pandemic. Who'd have thought that this would go on? I have never been as busy as I have been in the past 12 months. I have been the conduit, if you like, between DCMS government and our members, so that I've been able to share everything that comes out from government, and particularly in the early days when it was a daily update, which we would share every day to our members. We'd send emails, newsletters, everything, so that the clarity, which is, as many people know, was as clear as mud, so that we could make it into ABC language that people could understand what was available for them, what grants they could apply for, how they could apply, and whether actually it was relevant to them. And of course, there were so many questions that I was taking calls from everybody, from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. People would phone, they would email, worried. I'd have people in tears on the phone because they couldn't see a way out, and I'm still getting those now. So it's, it's still not finished. So I've been very much that communicator. So we have been the key communication channel, and how rightly so. And so very early on, I took the decision that actually it wasn't just about our members, it was about the visitor economy and the tourism industry across the whole board, so that it didn't matter whether you're a member of Visit Devon or whether you weren't, that I would make sure that we sent messages out to every business that was linked to tourism that could reach out to me, I could reach out to them, so that we could impart information to those people. Because as we all know, government clarity is not very easy to follow, and still isn't. So they'd announce something, but there was no criteria to what that announcement related to. So, and I would have to read pages through the .gov website to try and, if you like, wheedle out the key points that were so important to our little businesses. And of course, for Devon, many of our businesses are SMEs, are small, medium enterprises. So of course, a lot of family run. Jill has instigated how she was. Rick, it's all family run businesses and it's their livelihood. This is their lives. And these people were having zero income and many of them fell through the cracks so they couldn't apply for any funding. They couldn't get any money in. And then lockdown 1, the banks were relatively kind. But when it got to lockdown 2, they weren't so kind. And in lockdown 3, they weren't at all. So some businesses were expected to restart paying their mortgages, for example. And one classic example was a coach tour operator. Who would have thought that the coach tour operators would be affected as badly as they were? They weren't forced to close by government, so they weren't eligible to apply for any funding. So lockdown 1 was fine because the banks said, right, you have a finance holiday. Now, this particular coach company who has 30 coaches, each one of which is worth £300,000 to £400,000. His mortgage or his HP repayment on that was £16,500 a week, and he's not taking any income. How do you survive that? So I took that story, and that's just one of many stories. So every week since the pandemic began, a group of us have got together, as we're called the Great Southwest Tourism Partnership. Rick is part of that group. And we now have a very, very loud voice to government. So DCMS, we have a weekly or fortnightly meeting now, but it was weekly. We have a fortnightly meeting with DCMS and also a Visit England, so that we take back all the challenges that were thrown at us. And these were sent back. Things like insurance payments that people, the insurance companies refusing to pay out through loss of business, even though many of the businesses were paying for loss of business and they weren't, and the insurance company said, no, not paying out on that. We lobbied very, very hard on that. And Alistair Handyside, who runs a self-catering organisation in East Devon, is also the head of PATS, that's Professional Association of Self-Caterers. He's also the chair of the Southwest Tourism Alliance, which I'm also part of, and so is Rick. So it just shows how tight our family and our community is. So we shouted incredibly loudly. We got that heard at number 10. And as a result, we were one, but there was many across the company, but we were the loudest. Insurance companies are now paying out to a number of those businesses. Now that has been a lifeline to many, many people. So, but can you imagine how those people felt when they realized they weren't going to get anything back? And what also happened with pandemic, with lockdown 1, many businesses are taking deposits, which a number of people, Jill was lucky, she was only had to refund 1. A lot of people decided they wanted to have their refunds back. But of course, a lot of the businesses had actually used that deposit to do the winter maintenance to make sure that those properties were all ready for the Easter of 2020, which of course never happened. Who'd have thought that Easter of 2021 isn't going to happen either? So I'm still doing everything that I was doing from lockdown 1 now, but there are glimmers of hope. Since the roadmap has been announced, I've been attending virtual trade shows, for example. So, and if you look at Devon and Cornwall will be incredibly busy. We know that 2021 proved that. But what people have to remember, of course, is that a lot of these businesses are only running at 50% to 70% capacity, depending on what sort of sector you're in, because of the PPE required, the social distancing. So outside our lovely bubble here, people thought, Devon are doing incredibly well. They've been so busy. I get that from government. They're so busy. Yes, we're busy, but we're running at a capacity that is less than 100%. So again, it's making sure that people understand this, and so that funding is still required. Support packages are still required for these businesses to survive. And hospitality will bounce back. Absolutely, it will bounce back. But it's probably going to take 2 to 3 years for people to recoup, to get themselves back on an even keel or to par. And that's not talking about the businesses that have already gone. 4 hotels, for example, in Devon can't open their doors again. There's a number of attractions that have been announced, one of which I'm really sad about, that's happened this week, which is the Seaton Jurassic. These businesses aren't going to open again. And it's heartbreaking to hear the stories, because these people phone me and I've been speaking to them all the way through. So I feel like I've been part of their journey, and helpless that I couldn't actually secure enough or help them enough so that they can survive. So I've had that. So for me personally, that's been really difficult because I feel like I've become part of their family, their community. So, and we've got just so you know, we've got 680 members of Visit Devon. So you can imagine how busy my phone has been and my emails. But it's not just that, it's people that aren't members of Visit Devon who think, do you know, someone says, oh, Visit Devon can help you. They've got all the answers. Sadly, we don't have all the answers, but I do read the documentation. So I'm able to perhaps impart a simple nugget that will enable them to get either a glimmer of hope of some finance, or they suddenly realize, oh, actually, we are relevant. We are eligible to get that piece of funding. Didn't think we were. And then some people thought, actually, can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to fill in those forms. I said, it's a single sheet. You only have to answer 5 questions. Oh, so I had a lot of that. So that, again, you know, when you, it's just a simple note saying, actually, it'll take you 5 minutes to fill that in. And they'll come back and say, do you know, thank you for that. Otherwise I wouldn't have bothered. So when you get happy stories like that, and they say, it's because of that I will survive now, I'm going to get through. So moving on to the next stage, we're looking forward now, 2021. Pray to goodness it all happens. The vaccine program is rolling out, and we are further ahead than our European counterparts, as we all know, which means the staycation 2021, I do believe, will still be the year of the staycation. And I think it will be. We will be incredibly busy. So in a way, we have to now manage that it's a good experience that everybody has. My role has been very much to tell people not to come, when by nature, my role is to encourage people to come. So for me to have to say, push back and say, don't come to Devon during this, it's illegal to come to Devon, has been unnatural to me, to say the least. So I've also had to play a little bit of the police to stop people who are breaking the law, very obviously flouting the law, and to make sure that they don't jeopardize what is a very, very fragile situation at the moment. Because if we have a spike of people moving around when they shouldn't be, and we get a spike in rises, it actually jeopardizes all of our opening phase going forward. So we've been very, very vocal on that, to the point that we have reported people to the police last week, for example, because I saw second homeowners here. We've had people, Airbnb, it's been a big lobbying part on our side, just to make sure that we enable a safe opening and people can operate and move forward. My focus now is very much beyond August 2021. I am now looking at shoulder season, to extend our season so that Devon is very much a destination for 365 days of the year. I say that all the time to the people that they say, I know that Devon is in the suburbs of London and it's 365 days a year. Yes, it is. We've got open space, we've got exceptional food and drink, we've got the best larder in England. And I shout very loudly about our food and drink offering. I was part of Food and Drink Devon for a long, long time, still am very, very much an ambassador of that, and believe in local produce, which many of our organisations here use. So we've got something here for everybody. And I think one of the things that really came out loud and clear last year was the amount of millennials and Gen and Z that came and visited Devon last year and had the best time. They were paddleboarding, didn't realise we could do that here. They were coast-steering, they were horseback riding. The activity coast up in North Devon was phenomenal. The attractions were rammed. They didn't realise how much we had here. And I think it was almost that it's taken the pandemic for people to realise just how much we have to offer as a destination. And my job now is to make sure we get those people back, because I don't want them to see an EasyJet advert that says you can get to Portugal for 60 quid. Woo! Come to Devon. You don't need to sit in an airport lounge. You can just come straight here. You can enjoy the wonders of Devon and see what there is for everybody. And so I'm sort of working a little bit on nostalgic people, so to make sure they come back. It's a bit like the childhood memories, isn't it? So we've got a campaign at the moment, which is making great memories, which is great. Escape the Everyday, which is the Visit England, Visit Britain. I think we've tied into that promotion. And we've also got Reconnect to Devon. So it's just, again, pushing the Reconnect, because we're part of a project called Connections. So we're out there, we're very active. And I had an event, I was just saying to Louise and Jill before we came on air, that I went to an event called Explore GB, which is the Visit Britain flagship event, which is a global event. So I was having meetings with people that were in Australia and also in the US, virtual. It was amazing. Devon had 90 appointments in 4 days. Now, 90 appointments in 4 days is quite hard going, but my word, it was good, because it just shows the interest in the county and how far we've come in our 5 very short years of being in existence, of that Devon is such a popular destination now. And all you've got to do is look at the Visit Britain sentiment tracker and you'll see how close Devon and Cornwall are. We're at the very top now. Whereas before it used to be very much the Cotswolds, the Lake District, the Peaks. Now it's Devon and Cornwall, because we were always classed as the little sister at the end of the road. We're not anymore. We're loud. We absolutely communicate to the global market. I work with key people predominantly in Germany, the US, Netherlands and Australia, because we know that those are the marketplaces that are going to come to us. And we also are watching the vaccine roll out, because the Americans, I would say 60% of my appointments last week were American, and they all said, we want to come in 2022 because your vaccine program is so advanced. And I think that shows some real shoots of hope for us to move forward. And in our 5-year strategy, we want the domestic market. Yes, absolutely we do. But I think we have to be mindful. We may lose a few of those, and I need to replace them with the international as well. So sowing those seeds early has been vital. And I think that will take us through. And I am confident that Visit Devon and the businesses within Devon will survive and be here for a long, long time to come. That's me.
Thank you so much, Sally. That was really great and hopeful towards the end as well. And it's amazing. Thank you for all the work that you've done throughout the pandemic and generally just really putting Devon on the map as a destination as well. Having heard from our 4 speakers, we have had a couple of questions submitted by somebody who's not able to attend the event, but will be listening back to the recording. And then if we've got a little bit of time, if anybody has any burning questions they would like to ask, then we can go on to that. But I'd like to just ask these questions first. So the first one, it's directed to Jill really, and perhaps to Sally, but I'd like to expand it to James and Rick to think about their own sectors. So the question says, can you suggest 3 key actions a holiday rental owner or short stay host can take to attract bookings and make up for those losses in the last year? So,
okay, yeah, I can answer a bit of that. I don't think you can make up for the losses. You know, if you lost 80,000 last year, you can't be putting your prices up so much this year that you can get that 80,000 back again. And I think very much whatever business you're in, but, you know, certainly from my point, looking at self-catering, I've seen properties that in the summer that last year or the year before were probably, if you look at the year before, were around £2,000 a week to rent out. And you can be looking at now maybe £5,000–6,000 a week to rent out. And that, I'll be honest with you, makes my blood boil, because okay, yeah, you might get the bookings this year, but like Sally said, you know, when you can see that maybe you can go to Portugal for 60 quid or something, people could price themselves out of the market, and certainly you don't want to be doing that. You do have to look at your pricing and make sure that you've got good pricing, and potentially you can be upping prices, I would say, for shorter stays to make them a little bit more, but certainly don't price yourself out of the market. But I think you need to look at your properties. Your properties have got to be top notch. You know, I don't know if any of you are like me and watch 4 in a bed, and I do. I love it. I absolutely love it. And when I see people looking at the cleanliness, they're going, oh, there's hairs there, or that's not clean under there. They're going on national TV. Why is that property not you should be able to eat your food off the bath, the toilet. It should be spotless, and it makes my blood boil. So your properties have got to be top notch. Don't think, oh, well, we'll sort that later on. You know, if you need to get in with a paintbrush, get in there now. You've got 3 weeks to do it. You know, if something is looking a bit tatty, if the sofa's looking a bit tatty, get it changed. Yes, I know it's a cost, and it might cost you, you know, a few pounds to do it, but you want these people to come back again, and you want these people to say that actually where they stayed was the best. Make sure it's looking pretty, you know, have flowers, have the plants looking good, have things like coffee makers and stuff in your lodge, and maybe things that they won't have at home. You've got to try and make their staycation somewhere better than if they're at home. Okay, so certainly looking at all of those things. Welcome hampers, I think, you know, that first minute when someone walks into the property, that is what's going to stay with them. You know, the welcome hampers, the cream teas, the cakes, the bottle of wine, whatever it is, those are the things which count. So that might have been more than 3, I don't know.
That was some very good advice. I lost count, but it was good advice. Sally, have you got anything more to add?
Obviously, I mean, I think Jill mentioned overpricing. That is something that we unfortunately are starting to see a little. We're hearing this from a few people about. Someone said to me, and in fact, I've had complaints from consumers actually who have come to me saying, "Oh." And fortunately, they weren't members of Visit Devon, so I feel quite qualified to be able to speak about this. But some cottages and some self-catering have vastly inflated their prices, which is something like normally sort of £800 a week and now at £12.50 a week, which is in a 2019-2020 comparison. So it's a bit like if you have a petrol shortage, isn't it? And the garage at the end of the road puts its price up by 14p a litre, and then it comes back, and then people boycott it. And we have to be very careful of that. So I think the pricing is absolutely crucial. And also, don't forget there's competition. So we need to make sure that that's right, so that people keep coming back. And I think over-deliverance, as Jill said about things like the welcome hamper, things like the first impressions, so over-deliver. So, it's a can-do attitude all the way through. And of course, there's other things. Be a member of Visit Devon. I mean, what a great way to get your name out to the world. And, our self-catered, we are part of, we have so many different levels of booking channels, so it's really to make sure that for our members there is as many avenues as possible for people to book. So we've just become part of something called TXGB, which is linked to a number of our booking platforms, which is great. So it just gives an extra avenue of ways to book. And also there's working with people like the Professional Association of Self-Caters. All of these people have good ways of getting the network of getting names out there and promotion. But Visit Devon #1, obviously, just saying.
Thank you, Sally. I wonder whether James or Rick would like to maybe reflect on those sort of 3 top tips for sort of recouping losses, perhaps, from their sectors. I don't know whether Rick's disappeared again. James, have you got anything to add on that?
Yes, of course. I mean, we haven't put our prices up at all, and we don't intend to. I think for us, it's about purchasing. I think if there's a deal to be had on Heinz baked beans, then great. But also, you can't lower your standards. I mean, I've been offered so much cheap meat, some cheap fish, but I think stay with the best. We only buy from, we source all our ingredients from our best suppliers. And I think, you stay with that and just be savvy, really, and be the best around, and hopefully you'll have a great year.
Thanks, James. I think Rick might have, his internet might have dropped off or something again. So
outages, he's just sent me a message. He keeps getting Wi-Fi outages, he said.
Okay, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Okay. The second question, I was almost reluctant to ask because it seems a little bit negative, but I guess it's about being realistic as well. So the second question was, what can hosts or anybody in the industry really do to prepare for possible future lockdown or restrictions? Now, I don't want to sort of think that that's going to happen because we're in a much better position with vaccinations. So maybe thinking a little bit more about overall resilience as well. Whether there's any reflections from Sally, perhaps, on how businesses can make themselves resilient for any ups and downs in the world.
Well, the whole world, we all have bumps in the road, don't we? I think Rick sort of, when you think, I mean, we are a resilient industry, and we hit bumps in the road, such as, I mean, we had lots, we had 9/11, then we had foot and mouth, then we had SARS, and we've all come through those, albeit not like this as a pandemic, but those bumps in the road threatened our industry at that time. So this one has obviously been the worst. And I think, can we ever go through anything as bad as this again? No, hopefully not. The resilience, I mean, one of the things, as I've said earlier, was for us to come out of this. The vaccinations obviously is great, but it's when people have been breaking the law and it's jeopardizing our businesses. So I think we all of us are responsible. If we know that things are happening that shouldn't be happening, such as second homeowners being here now, people trying to book, if you like, under the cover of darkness. I've heard various people who have said that they will ring up and come down at like 4 o'clock in the morning so that no one sees them. So I think we have a responsibility to make sure that those sort of things don't happen, so that we stay within the opening phase. So I think that's number one, so that we can continue. We can't stop. I mean, the only thing we can do is be mindful that this could happen again. The government will, it's knowing what the support packages will be. And that's the only advice I can give. It's the only way we can, if you like, manage that, because we can't stop a pandemic. I mean, nobody can, but we now have the experience to be more resilient, I think. And, you know, people can see that this has happened, how we've survived, and it's possible different nuggets that you've taken from that can help you if we are forced into lockdown again, how you can then structure that from what your experience has been to survive. And I think really that's the only advice I can give on that, because we can't really do any more than that.
Thanks, Sally. Yeah, I agree. I think we've all in various ways had lots of learning for ourselves and our businesses over the last year that we can actually use, as Rick says, to grow. So I think that's an important point. I don't know whether Jill or James has any further reflections on that question.
Yeah, no, totally agreeing with what Sally was saying, but I think, you know, financially, I think we probably all need to look at our finances, and rather than just thinking, oh, that's what we've got, yes, we can afford to buy that, it might leave us at zero, but that's fine. I think we all need to look at our finances, and I can't say put away for a rainy day, but I think we somehow do need to try and do that if we can. And just another thing I think maybe is, as Rick was saying, make sure that you're in a good place yourself. And certainly through this lockdown, I've been focusing with Sally as well on fitness and exercise. And it's a challenge that we've both been involved in. And so when you're stressed, etc., or however bad the day is, you have something else to focus on. So certainly your lifestyle and fitness and healthy eating is certainly something that has got me through this lockdown.
And I actually second that. I mean, Jill and I are members of a gym in Exeter that's the most bizarre gym in the world. And I remember someone saying to me once, oh, you go to that crazy gym. And that was a trader who said that. He said, I see those people, they're not normal. But when you have something like this, Jill and I have become part of what is known as the 8-week challenge. And it is a challenge. I mean, it is a challenge. The exercise, the classes are incredibly difficult. Keeping within a set calorie count is really hard, because you, as Jill said yesterday, I think, or the day before, she said, gosh, I got to 11 o'clock and I've eaten my whole calorie count already. But all joking aside, the fitness and well-being has been just a lifesaver for me. If I didn't train, I would go mad. I know I would. So that, and I think, Jill, you're in the same mindset, but there's lots of people like that. And people have all said that the exercise and the training, and there's 50 people on this challenge with us out of our gym, 50 people feel a million times better because of doing something like that. Simple, but it's doing something like that. And you're doing it with other people. So you're a little bit like, it's known as the Fit with Bretty challenge, but doing that has pulled us all together. And you feel that you're not alone. And I think that's another really important thing. You're doing it with other people who are like-minded.
Thank you. I think that's really the point of the Listening Ear project, actually, with these events and the one-to-one, is to think about building that personal resilience and the feeling that you're able to access support and there are other people out there. And for example, events like this, just hearing from other people in similar sectors who've gone through similar things can be, I hope, a reassurance to people. That's the 2 questions that I had submitted beforehand. We have a small amount of time if anybody's got any questions. I can't see, there's quite a lot of participants, so I can't see both screens. So if anybody does have a question, if you could raise your hand virtually, just give people a moment in case they do. Okay, that's fine if nobody has any questions. We will be sending around the details of the recording once it's up on YouTube. I hope everybody has found this session really useful. Thank you for coming along, and a massive thank you to our 4 speakers. Thank you so much for everybody, and please have a look at our Listening Ear webpage as well. There's more information there about how to access the one-to-one service if that is something that you would like. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.